when it comes to the native token of MultiversX called EGLD, there's three hypothetical price scenarios that I have on my mind, and this is maybe even assuming if there is a fully fledged type of altcoin season during this cycle. However, only time will tell. And even though nothing I say is financial advice, here's the first price scenario that I do want to explore that I'm currently thinking about. However, that is maybe equaled at the idea of $180, which is around a 14x from here. Market cap at that point would be around 5 billion if we were to consider the current circulating supply. However, why wouldn't this necessarily surprise me? It's because if I take a look at something like MultiversX, I do like its fundamentals, and let me explain why. For instance, if we take a look at MultiversX, when it comes to the EGLD network, it is a distributed blockchain network. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, why would you care about that? I mean, there's kind of a lot of other projects out there that sort of have that same focus. Well, I think that this one I still like nonetheless because, for instance, historically, I've seen integrations and tools from leading companies from all around the globe, such as, for instance, Google Cloud, Ledger, Opera, Amazon Web Services, and even Axelar as well. So when it comes to MultiversX, I kind of like what it's been able to achieve, historically speaking, not to mention as well. Something that kind of excites me when it comes to MultiversX is something called sovereign chains. Now, basically, right, this allows to build and deploy custom layer 2s or app chains, or should I say application chains. And, these, for instance, does include something like Ethereum layer 2s, Bitcoin layer 2s, and even Solana layer 2s as well. Now, let me explain what an Ethereum layer 2 is just for an example, right? When it comes to an Ethereum layer 2, we see many examples of this, like for instance, Optimism, Arbitrum, something like the Base network, which is Coinbase's layer 2. But even besides that, what is the role of that, right? Now, generally speaking, a layer 2 for Ethereum, the way you take a look at it is that it kind of allows Ethereum to be enjoyed, while at the same time not necessarily having to deal with some of the drawbacks that I often see. Like for instance, when it comes to Ethereum, arguably, when it comes to its scalability, I don't think it's the best. Also on top of that, when it comes to the gas fees, I'm not a fan of it. However, when it comes to Ethereum, the adoption is very popular, right? But then again, there are some drawbacks the way you take a look at it. So that's kind of like, again, where an Ethereum layer 2 kind of steps in, kind of allows Ethereum to be enjoyed, while at the same time not necessarily having to deal with, again, the drawbacks I mentioned before. So again, I think that kind of gives a little bit of a glimpse as to why I think, layer 2s are pretty cool. So again, when I take a look at something like, sovereign chains, allegedly allowing to build and deploy custom layer 2s or app chains, or should I say again, application chains, I find that pretty interesting. However, also on top of that, it is alleged that MultiversX is even fully carbon neutral, so I find that very impressive. So overall, again, I get it. MultiversX is under some stiff competition. I mean, of course, we take a look at some other, projects out there that some people would maybe consider competitors like Algorand, like Avalanche, something like Solana, for instance, right? Or even just like, just a bunch. However, at the same time, what I like about MultiversX is that it is pretty well established. The recognition is there. And also on top of that, when it comes to, I think, just projects in general, or should I say just like blockchains, right? I don't think it's only just one that does it, and then the rest don't really do anything. I mean, for instance, Ethereum is very popular as a layer 1 blockchain. I'm just going to use that as an example. But then Solana is also very popular as a layer 1 blockchain, right? We've also seen what BNB did, and take a look at how popular the BNB chain is. Not to mention, we've also seen historically what something like Algorand or Avalanche does, or should I say has done. So overall, I don't think it's only just going to be one thing. It's like, for instance, in real life, let's say, when it comes to cars, is there only one car brand out there? No, right? I mean, there's a bunch. And also it applies to like, just even clothing brands or, when it comes to just brands, when it comes to watches, right? I'm using a G-Shock, for instance, or should I say a Casio? But again, like a G-Shock, I mean, there isn't only just one brand. So I do like the positioning when it comes to MultiversX. However, only time will tell, but maybe its native token called EGLD, if it ever even hypothetically reached $180 during a fully fledged type of altcoin season, wouldn't necessarily surprise me. Maybe during this cycle, but only time will tell if it ever even does. However, the next hypothetical price scenario that I do have on my mind is maybe EGLD at the idea of $190, which is nearly a 15x from here, and the market cap at that point would be nearly $5.5 billion. The reason why it wouldn't necessarily surprise me is because, like Shiba Inu reached around $40 billion in market cap back in 2021, and even back in 2021, we saw BNB reach over $100 billion. Now I get it, BNB reached a new all-time high during this cycle, but even like years ago, the market cap was already like pretty massive at that time during the peak of that altcoin season. So this doesn't seem like that ridiculous to me, but again, only time will tell. This is just my outlook, but again, this is just the way to take a look at it. However, the third and final hypothetical price scenario that I do want to explore is maybe the idea of $200 when it comes to EGLD. That's around a 15.6x from here, and the market cap at that point would be nearly $6 billion if we were to consider the current circulating supply. Now, to me, why wouldn't it necessarily surprise me? It's because I like how there's supposedly over 600 million crypto owners currently. However, during the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was around 300 million crypto owners. Whereas again, right now, there's over 600 million crypto owners supposedly, which is supposedly again more than ever before in history. And I take a look at the Bitcoin ETF, for instance. If this altcoin season, if it ever even does a fully fledged one during this cycle, if it looked better than back in 2021, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me. Now, personally for me, I will not be able to know the exact moment in time. I feel like the only thing I can do is just prepare for a moment in time. Now, I'm not telling you to do anything, but even if I take a look back in history, which historically speaking, I've seen how typically altcoins, as a worst case scenario, they usually peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. And the last Bitcoin halving event happened in April of 2024. So if we add 18 months on top of that, that's actually October this year. Do I think it's going to be exactly that time? I mean, who knows? That is based off history. It could happen maybe later. Only time will tell, but maybe if it ever even hypothetically does, if it even extends all the way up until March of 2026, whenever the timeline is, it's going to be beyond my control. So the only thing I can do again is just control myself, and I'm going to be dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting, and that's pretty much about it. But again, I treat it like a marathon. It's not a sprint to me, so I'm just going to stay patient, dollar cost average again, and just hold. However, at the same time, this is just my outlook when it comes to the project. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's Billy the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.